Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Speak Up Erika podcast. And today our guest is Liz. Woo! Hi,
Ooh.
Liz.
Hi, Erika. Thank you so much for having me here today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being on. May you please share, Liz, what you do and you're just a little bit of who you are.
Sure. My name is Liz Jakoi, and I teach successful business women who, are at that stage in life where they're feeling stressed, anxious, overwhelmed because they're approaching that next stage in life, to move from that state into a state of peace and calm so that they'll have more energy and enthusiasm in life.
Awesome. So may you share an example, Liz, of the type of work that you do? I know me and you, we did have a session together, and Liz helped me change my mindset on something that I feel icky about and changing it into something more positive, I guess you could say.
Yeah, make a new decision.
Yeah.
Definitely. So what I do is one of the I'll share with you, one of the ladies that I worked with was in depression, not necessarily clinical depression, but depression in terms of looking at the world in as despair and doom, and nothing ever goes right for me, and all those kind of things. And so when we dig deeper, what we found is it's a fixed problem that on the problem, not, and taking a look at the problem as the problem. And once we identified the meaning that she attached to the problem, we can uncover the limiting belief. So for example, she found that her limiting belief, the core limiting belief, is that she's not good enough. And when you start thinking you're not good enough, anytime you sit in front of your computer, or anytime you go to pick up the phone, or you want to make a sales call and you're not feeling good enough, that kind of feeling will resonate, will be emitted. And then of course it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then you're not making the sales calls, you're not doing the right emails. And so one of the problem is with depression is they're so fixated on the problem. And oftentimes what I've helped recognize with people that are depressed is they also have what I call a fixed mindset, that there's only one way things can be. And when you're depressed, it's really hard to even start thinking about outside the box. And I know, because I've been there. You're so far deep and self-absorbed with what's going on inside that it's hard to see that, you think that the world is conspiring against you. Nothing ever goes right. Right? So that's why I like to help people to show that really our brain, and you may have heard this before too, and this might help some of your listeners, is if you're in that fixed mindset, know that your brain's been wired for that. And what we've recently found is that our brains are neuroplastic. So that means that they can change. And it's called neurosculpting. So that's what I do with people. Really uncover that it's the belief that they're not good enough, which leads them to think, that they're lousy or that they can't do anything right, and makes them feel horrible, puts them into a depression. And of course, when you're in depression, you're not going to behave and act in a way that's going to help you move out of that. And so the result is that, you may not get the sales calls, you may not be able to get out of bed, you may not be able to do the things that you need to do. And that just reinforces that belief. And so what I want people to start looking at is recognize when you're not feeling well, take a look at what's going on in your mind, take a look at what you're thinking. And if you're thinking about just problems, start trying to think about the meaning that you're giving the problem. And then you'll realize that maybe I need to start being more proactive. Maybe I'm just thinking about it, and thinking about it, you can start changing it.
With people with depression and anxiety, would a tip for trying to overcome it is to find that limiting belief, and then when you find the limiting belief, then when you change your mindset, then it will help the neuron plastic. Is that, sorry,
The
Liz?
neuron, yeah, the
Yeah.
synaptic connections, yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
kind of rewiring of the brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they've been wired a certain way based on something that they attached a meaning to in their childhood, that something might have happened. And so they attach a meaning to it. And because they attach that meaning to it, every time that that happens or they see that happening, they're going to feel anxiety and overwhelm. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes, there's a lot going on. The first step I want people to recognize is that they can only be in two states of being. And the first state is a suffering state, or anxiety state, or depression state, or feeling good, joy, happiness, peace, calm. You can only be in one or the other, and you can't be in both at the same time.
Hmm.
So the awareness that you're in that state and you're not feeling good. What I want people to start doing is to start looking at their thinking. What are the thoughts going on? Is the thought that I'm lousy, I never do anything right, I'm bothering people, um, maybe there's some kind of confusion. And of course, when you recognize that, your energy is low, and that puts you in a state of hopelessness. And really, you want to be the opposite. Our natural tendency is to be the opposite. That's really where we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
But our brains have this negative bias to be in a negative state. And some of it refers back to the very beginnings of humankind. So we had that primal state, right, where we always had to be on alert for fight or flight, right?
Mm-hmm.
But really, there really isn't a tiger chasing us in this world, right? So it's kind of like where it's kind of natural to be in both states, one or the other. So the first step is really recognizing that you're in that suffering state, that you're in that state, and just say, oh, there it is. And that might help you to calm down. And then when you're in a calmer state, you can start examining the thoughts. What is the thinking going on when you're in that state?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and start journaling it. I think that would be really effective. Yeah.
That's interesting that you talk about the tiger chasing us. Because is it do our ancestors, like, our mind state passes on from them, and then that's why we feel certain traits that they have as well in the past?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
always there. It's
Yeah.
housed in our amygdala, I believe. And so
Yes.
um, when we were primates, right, we were mostly in a state of fight, flight, or fear. And it was because of the way nature was. And of course, as we evolved, as we grew and recognized that we didn't have to be in that state anymore, we found that state of pleasure, right? Or that
Mm-hmm.
state of thriving.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we still that's why when I tell people that, I teach people that there's a power of decision, two states of being, and then there's a success system as well. But it's important to recognize, that's why I always say it's only 90% of the time we can be in a state of peace and calm, because it's important to keep that primal kind of suffering, fight or flight stage, because it's kind of a signal for us. It's like an emotional guidance system for us now
Mm-hmm.
to tell us that we need to change, that we need to correct something, because it's really
Ah.
not natural for us to be depressed. It's not natural for us to be in a state of anxiety. And that's why it's kind of like we're fixated on problems and we're fixated on being in that state. And I think there's a good book that people might want to read too, and it's called Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And he talks about sometimes when we're in a suffering state, we're so far into the suffering that we don't even know we're suffering, because we haven't experienced feeling joy. We haven't experienced feeling happiness. We haven't experienced feeling peace. And so
Mm-hmm.
one of the other tips to start feeling that you can feel something more than anxiety and depression would be meditation. Meditation really helps to calm the nervous system down, because what's happening is when we're in that state of fight or flight, our emotional guidance system, our sympathetic nervous system is activated. That keeps us in that agitated state. And really, when you're meditating, you can move into what we call the parasympathetic nervous system is activated. So it can help you calm things down. So that's what I do in my work, is really attach a lot of the scientific brain psychology behind what's going on. Because I think when people really understand what's really going on with this CPU between your ears, it's a great technology that we have here, right? And so it's you're operating in one system. So what I could like to call it is you're operating in system 1.0, and I'm going to show you how to rewire it so that, and change the software and do a new update so that you're operating in a 2.0 system.
Yeah.
You like that?
I like that one. I think most people, maybe they don't realize that they can really, or don't know a way on how to change their mindset, right? Because they're so stuck into how they grew up, or maybe how they're feeling for the past year or two, and like, oh, I can't get a job here. No one likes me. I don't know. They have so many different limiting beliefs that it's hard for them to get out of it. So I guess, Liz, like how can they, if they're so far into like the rabbit hole, I guess, what is a tip or a piece of advice on what's the first step on getting out? And you said it was acknowledging it.
Acknowledging that you're in that state is definitely the first step. And maybe just telling yourself, oh, it's there. Because as soon as you notice, you say that, it's amazing. The sympathetic nervous system kind of slows down and the parasympathetic nervous system engages. Because it's like, oh, it's there. Because you're not attaching any judgment to it. You're not attaching any feeling to it. You're recognizing the feeling, but not judging it. So that's the first step. Because oftentimes I think people start judging it and start that self-criticism, inner dialogue starts going, right? And that makes it worse. That makes that rabbit hole deeper. So if you want to start climbing out of it, my suggestion would be is just recognize it's there without any judgment, right? And then the next step would be the thoughts. What are the thoughts coming up for you, right? And recognize that maybe it's not true. Maybe it's not true that somebody doesn't like you, right? Maybe it's not true that you're bothering people. It's not true that you're a lousy person. It's not true, because I'm sure if we sat down, we could find evidence for the opposite that has occurred in your life. And I think that's what people don't do, is they don't take that time to really examine and reflect and redirect.
Yes, right? I agree. Liz, may I ask how you got started in this job and how you discovered changing mindset and with the scientific aspect as well?
It's always been a fascination of mine since I was little. Always thinking about what you're thinking. I remember I had this stone in our backyard. I was probably about 7, 8 years old, and when I was in trouble, when I got in trouble, my mom would always say, now you go think about what you did, right? So I'd find my little spot in the backyard, and it was a stone, and I'd sit there thinking. And I always used to think about, oh, it's interesting what we're thinking and how we can think about different things, whether we're good or bad, or how to change things based on what my mom said. Okay, so next time I do that, maybe I shouldn't do that, I should do this. And even out through school, I used to always find myself wanting to help people. And then I went into, I graduated from University of Toronto in psychology. And I took psychology because I was always fascinated by the inner workings of the mind, and schizophrenia, like all the different things that were happening. So I had a better understanding of what happens to the human mind and the brain. And, for aphasia or stroke victims, that sort of thing. And so I've always been in inquiry since then about human beings and tapping their inner potential, and that we can always develop and grow more than where we are from now. So that's kind of been my inquiry. And I started working in training and development. So sort of identifying where people are, where they want to be, and then offering training. But I used to notice that people would fall off. But so I was always questioning, like, that gap, there's got to be more to that gap than just giving people training. because it's not sticking.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started, and of course, throughout the years, I was working training development, then as a job coach, career coach, employment counselor. And then about 6 years ago, I decided to go out on my own because I've found more recently, and that neuroscientific, so I found what is in that gap.
Mm.
And it's the limiting beliefs. So why people fall off health and nutrition, why people fall off time management systems, why people fall off leadership skills or customer service or anything they know they should be doing, is because there's some kind of limiting belief going on in their life that's really holding them back from growing and expanding.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why now in the last couple of years I started focusing more on that gap and changing limiting beliefs for people and rewiring the brain. It's really
Yes.
important.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, Liz. May you give an example about what a limiting belief is, maybe? Maybe someone doesn't really understand what it exactly it is.
Okay, sure. Things would be like money's hard to make. Those are the thoughts that are going through their head. Relationships never work out. There's not enough time. I'm not
Mm.
good enough. There's no good men in the world. There's no good women in the world. They're all the good ones are taken. I never seem to be able to get ahead. I keep trying, but nothing ever works out for me. Those are
Mm-hmm.
the kind of the thoughts that are going on. And it usually boils down the core belief of I'm not good enough. Or maybe there's some kind of fear of failure. When you start comparing yourself and thinking, look at so-and-so is doing it. Why, or um, why isn't why isn't someone contacting me, or what's going on here, and why
Yeah.
isn't this happening, why isn't that happening? It's kind of like, and maybe there's some kind of fear of failure going on as well, fear of
Mm.
making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And when sometimes I notice with people too, when they're indecisive, they can't decide one way or another, there's
Right.
always some kind of fear of mistake going on. So it's a matter
Uh,
of unraveling and untangling what's going on. So it's most of the time it's fear based.
mm-hmm.
And just, I would suggest to people, just recognize once again it's there without any judgment. And that might help them calm down so they can start thinking about, again, exactly what's going on with that limiting belief, maybe where it came from.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the good examples is, when you're a kid and you're in grade 1 and you tell your friend you're going to meet them by the water cooler so you can go out to recess and skip or play hopscotch.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as the bell goes, you go to the water cooler and they don't show up.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so you attach a meaning to that nobody loves me, nobody likes me, that I'm all alone in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right? And so you don't find out, because we're too young at that age to go be proactive to find out what happened to your friend, why maybe they got sick and they got sent home and we don't know,
Yeah.
right? And at that age we don't know to do that kind of inquiry. So we
Mm-hmm.
attach meaning to that. So later in life we go out on a date, right? Or we're supposed to meet that man of our dreams or the woman of our dreams at a coffee shop, and they don't show up, and we go, oh, here we go again. Nobody loves me. It happens
Mm-hmm.
again. It always happens to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? But maybe not. Maybe they got in a car accident. They had a flat tire. Maybe
Right.
somebody in their family got sick. We don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes we don't take that step to figure out, be proactive, and just send them a quick text. Hey, we were going to meet up. What happened, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So can you see how that little incident from when you were in grade 1 can just permeate your life throughout your
Yes.
life? And
Yeah.
so when you start thinking, nobody loves me, and you're trying to sit in front of your computer and get sales going or do your work, you can't, because you're thinking you're not lovable. And so
Right.
you're emitting that out. Really, it's all energy. You're emitting that energy out into the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Yeah.
synaptic connections are formed that way. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're emitting that out into the world, that we're not good enough. And of course that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that reflects back to us.
Oh,
So that's
wow.
what I want to do, is I want to help
Yeah.
people change that, so they
Yes.
get the neurosynaptic connections changing, is that they are lovable, that they they are good enough, that
Yes.
that money is easy to make, all those kind of things, so that now that's the energy from the synaptic connections in your brain you're emitting out, and then that's what you're going to focus your reality on.
Wow.
Cool,
That's
eh?
that's really cool, Liz. I
Mm-hmm.
think like we don't even realize how much our childhood has really affected the person that we are right now, and like our mind, how it works, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but no one really, I guess, thinks about digging deeper unless they go to therapy, and then
Mm-hmm.
they discover it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, well, a lot of people that I've coached have come
Mhm.
to me from therapy, not to
Yes.
kibosh therapy, but I guess they're done talking. They want to
Yeah.
take action,
Yes, makes
right?
sense. Yeah.
And so what I show them is that it's really their thinking that has been causing the problem, not the problem itself. And so
Hmm.
when they realize that, like that incident about, the child, it's like, what was I thinking? And I go, well, you're only 6.
Yeah.
Right? Like a 6-year-old doesn't know. A
Yeah.
6-year-old just attached meaning to it. So now that you know, you
Exactly.
cannot, you start seeing the lie that you've told yourself all these years. And once you
Hmm.
see the lie, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's kind of cool. Yeah. So that's what I do with people. And they go, all these years of therapy, right?
Yeah.
And then the other people that I've worked with too is they've done hypnotherapy, or the EFT. Have you heard of the tapping?
No.
Right? There's that kind of therapy. There's all sorts of therapies, and then they come to me and there's like, why didn't I? And I said, you know what? This is something new.
Yes,
It's just
exactly.
within the last couple of years that we've become
Yes.
aware of that our brain is plastic and we can change the wiring. So,
Yes.
if we had known this years ago, yeah, right? Like who knows? Yeah, there'd
Exactly.
be a lot of change. So that's what I want to do, is impact people's lives that way, and help them so that they can live a much more peaceful and calm and serendipitous life, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
yeah.
Liz, may I ask how long does it take for most of your clients to get out of those limiting beliefs?
Typically, I work with 3 people within 3 months. It takes about
Okay.
3 months, once a week for about an hour. There's some teaching, so I teach them a lot of this methodology that I just told you about, and how to
Mm-hmm.
rewire the brain, and
Mm-hmm.
just to make sure that they stay on top. So typically about 3 months. Some people that have lasted a little longer, just because there's just so many limiting beliefs that we need to untangle. But
Right.
most people get it right away. And I find the people that do the work from a week to week and a day to day, it has to become like a daily ritual
Right. Like a
to
habit.
think about a habit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if they adopt it as a habit, then yeah, it's a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's like me too. Sometimes I fall off, doing my daily rituals because I get busy with
Yeah.
things. But I notice after the couple of days, it's like, oh, I wasn't drinking my water. Got to get back to drinking my water
Water.
again. And
Yes.
it's just human. I'm a human being too. Everyone's human. But once you recognize it, oh, that's why I got a cramp in my leg. I'm not drinking water again, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah. So little things like that. Yeah. If it
Awesome.
has to become a habit, for sure.
Yeah. So, would you, other than this type of therapy of changing mindset, you did bring up journaling and meditation. Would those be some other ways to, I guess, help with what you're going through if you're going through anxiety and depression and feeling bad about yourself?
Exactly. Because then you can examine the thinking that's going on. And
Mm-hmm.
then once you see the thinking, I want people to look at the unintelligence in the thinking, or that it's not true,
Mm-hmm.
and then find evidence for the opposite, that the
Mm-hmm.
opposite is true. And then start looking at how someone did love them before, how their parents loved them, how other people have loved them despite that water cooler incident in grade
Mm-hmm.
1, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one way. Visualization is another
Mm-hmm. What is that?
tool. Visualization is just visualizing in the morning how your day is going to play out for you,
Okay.
because imagination is key to making changes as well. And you see that athletes do that, right? Like Olympic gold medal winners, they imagine the race and
Oh.
imagine crossing the finish line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that so their body feels like they've done it already.
Oh,
So
I didn't
imagine it.
know that.
Yeah, so imagination is key. Visualization is key as well for how your day is going to unfold. You know, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to go about your day in a peace and calm state. You know, you're driving on the highway to work or whatever, and you know, you're calm, listening to music, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So visualization, meditation, journaling, definitely exercise. I mean, it could just be stretching,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little bit of yoga,
Yoga, yes.
or something more intense if you like. It's whatever you know, it's going to help you. And those are morning rituals that I would highly recommend for people to start the day off. Yeah.
And these tools, they do help with, I guess, calming the mind. And that's how we kind of ease out of getting out of the way that we're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's a first step for sure.
Right.
You're just calming down the mind. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Liz. Um,
Thank you, Erika.
May you please share how people can connect with you and book an appointment with you on how to find these limiting beliefs within themselves?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a website, Liz Jakoi, LIZJAKOI.com, and they can connect with me through there. They can book a quick little session, what I call a breakthrough session with me.
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe I can help them in that 30 minutes, just for a little session. If they want to take it further, we can. There's no pressure, no obligation. As you know, I've done it with you.
Yes, Liz and I did
uh,
it.
yeah. And then the other way is Liz Jakoi, LIZJAK at gmail.com. They can connect through email as well.
Mm-hmm. I think when Liz and I did it together, it is like a therapy session, and have never done anything like that before. And Liz really asked me, "Well, how did that make you feel? And how did this make you feel?" And I think I never thought about how it made me feel before, so it was really difficult to even. I was like, "Oh, I don't even know how it makes me feel." So Liz's session was really helpful in finding out more about my own limiting beliefs and trying to help change that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. I'm glad it did. Yeah. And
Yeah.
just keep reminding yourself of that decision that we made and the evidence. And
Yes.
that's every day. That's what I tell people is just, I'm hoping you're doing that as well. And if you haven't, that's okay. Just a reminder, you know,
Yes.
remind yourself of the new decision and the evidence that we came up with
Mm-hmm.
to help you overcome that limiting belief. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Liz. Thank you for sharing with us what you do.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this. Thanks, Erika.
You're welcome. Bye.
Have a good day. Bye bye.